More volume, please. Thank you. Testing. Okay. Thanks very much, Phil. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as has been indicated, we're running just a little bit behind schedule. So in order to move things along, we have made arrangements for, and our guest speaker, our luncheon speaker is already here. So with your indulgence, I'm going to introduce him, and certainly continue to have your meal. There's still adequate food that's out in the entryway there, so please feel free to move out and get some dessert if you have not as yet picked that up, or even main course. Our speaker today is Mr. Reg Porter. He's an Islander who has spent his childhood in the Tignish area. He attended high school in Montreal and began his university studies at Loyola College. He continued his education at Mount Allison University, where he took degrees in classical civilization and education. He later studied at the American School of Classical Studies in Athens. Reg had a long career teaching high school in Sackville, New Brunswick, and ended his time there on the faculty at Mount Allison, where he was a research associate at the Center of Canadian Studies and a lecturer in education. He returned to PEI in 1981, and for a number of years worked at the Heritage Foundation as curator of exhibits and public programs. In 1989, he became self-employed as a heritage consultant and spent the next years working in museum planning. Archaeological surveys and historic building restorations was his passion. Concurrently, for 16 years, he was a seasonal lecturer at the University of Prince Edward Island, and during that time taught over 50 credit semester courses in art history. In 2000, he retired to Bell River, where he enjoys gardening, giving public lectures, and trying to complete a lifetime of projects on island heritage. Please give a very warm welcome. It's our pleasure to have Reg Porter.
There's always the moment of miracle when you touch something and nothing happens. Never mind. I have this. Yes, I did. That's my
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what.
Yeah, that little touch in the air. Today, boys, now?
Okay, let me put mine back. Just turn the dial toward it.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, to share with you some of the things about the island that I think are very special. I'm very honored to have been invited to speak to you, and it's the first time that I have ever spoken to a group of people assembled because of their interest in farming on Prince Edward Island. Having heard my introduction, you may wonder exactly what it is I know about farming on Prince Edward Island, and you would be very justified in asking that question and raising your eyebrows. Well, I grew up as a child surrounded by farms. I played with the cows in the pasture. In Bell River, I'm surrounded by farms, some of them nice, some of them not very nice. And my whole perception of the island, when I stop to think about it, is measured, is controlled by what farmers have done during the past 250 years. When you look at the island from a few hundred kilometers up, at first it looks just like the green thing that it is, our Green Isle, our Emerald Isle. But when you start to look more closely, and you need time to do this, which we don't have, you start to see that in various areas, you see it especially here in the east end of the islands, there appear to be lines running through at intervals. And you see some areas which are lighter than others, which indicates that this is clear land that's being farmed. And there are other areas that are much darker, which are still woodlot and boggy areas. You can learn an awful lot about the present state of the island by looking at a map like that. But that is not what we are going to do. That summarizes 200 years of intense human activity on the island, and we know from the study of archaeology that it represents at least 10,000 years of probably continuous human occupation on this island. People have been living here over 10,000 years. It's impossible to imagine that from what I have experienced of time in my life. This is a tricky subject, and I have to control what I say very, very carefully, because I have a tend to go on at the mouth, sometimes quite long and quite offensively, about how we are encouraged to perceive what the island is today. Certainly, visitors from other places who come to the island are barraged with so much publicity that they think that the island was created for Anne and for no one else. And everywhere you go, there is evidence of Anne of Green Gable. She's everywhere. What does she have to do with the island and its citizens? Not a bloody thing. She's a piece of fiction written over 100 years ago now by a woman who could be charitably described at best as quite neurotic. What contact with islanders from one end of the island to the other did Lucy Maud Montgomery have? Or was she secure in what in PEI passed for her upper middle class environment? The relatives that it was appropriate to associate with, and the majority of the islands that you kept your distance from because they did not belong to your social level. And yet, the work of genius, and it is a work of genius that she produced, has given us our most famous citizen, and has, by doing that, robbed the island from an appreciation of what really matters and what really makes this place what it is. The other fictional thing that visitors to the island and school children, unfortunately, are barraged with is the fact that this is the birthplace of Confederation. And most people are familiar with that photograph taken in 1864 on the steps of Government House, or Fanning Bank as it's sometimes called, where 5 politicians from Prince Edward Island met with a bunch of skeptical people from other parts of what was then Eastern Canada, Lower Canada, Upper Canada, the maritime provinces, and they tried to persuade PEI to join Confederation, which it spitefully refused to do. And yet it has the gall today to advertise itself as the birthplace of Confederation. It wasn't until 1873, when it was absolutely desperate for money and railroads, that the island joined Confederation. So, we are best known to the world and to ourselves by two fictional entities. One, a person, one, an episode. I assure you that there is far, far much more to the island than that. It is the island on which the citizens live, travel, work, dream, succeed, and fail. It is the province of Prince Edward Island. The Aboriginals, as far as we can tell, did not make a heavy impact on the soil of Prince Edward Island. We know where many of them lived. I myself have had the privilege of excavating sites going back a very, very long time and finding stone artifacts that are so beautiful that there is no serious museum in the world that wouldn't want to own them. Things of extraordinary beauty. But we don't know what the impact of these three groups of Aboriginals, culminating with the Mi'kmaq, actually had on the island as a whole, because they were most probably limited to camps. The first major impact on the island itself was made by the French and the Acadians they brought with them to farm the land, starting in 1720, and they worked very, very hard, but because the French government was providing totally insignificant support and encouragement, they didn't do very well. But they did go all over the island, as you can see, in Cascompec Bay, in Malpec Bay, St. Peter's Bay, Tracadie, all along the Hillsborough River, and at Three Rivers.